So to graph exponential functions, we're going to make an xy table and plug in x values between -2 and 3 to the functions. So for example, the function f of x equals 2 to the x. To plug in the -2 value, we do 2 to the -2. Since that's a negative exponent, that flips it on a fraction. So 1 over 2 squared, which is 1 over 4. So we can plot the point -2, 1/4. Plugging in -1, 2 to the -1 is 1 over 2 to the +1, so 1/2, -1, comma 1/2. 2 to the 0 is 1, because any positive number to the 0 power is 1. 2 to the 1 is 2. 2 to the 2 is 4. And 2 to the 3 is 8. So we just get each of those points by plugging in these x values into the function 2 to the x. Okay, if we connect these points, we get the exponential function. The exponential function has range that is positive because it has an asymptote at the line y equals 0. So that makes the range all numbers that are greater than 0 or as an interval 0, infinity, because the result of this exponential function is always positive. The domain that can be plugged in is any real number, so -infinity to infinity, or all real numbers for the domain. If you look at example 15, graphing the function -2 to the x power, we'll do the same thing and plug in x values into that function. So that would look like, for plugging in -2 to the -2 power would be 1 over -2 to the 2 powers. So flip it, make the power positive, but the number stays negative. So that's 1 over -4 or -1/4. So -2, -1/4. Plugging in -1, that would be -2 to the -1 power. So we flip the number 1 over -2 to the +1, but we keep the number negative because of the negative sign out front. So that's 1 over -2, so -1/2. Plugging in 0, that's -2 to the 0 power, which is 1. So 2 to the 0 is 1, but then we have a negative out front, so -1. And then -2 to the 1 power would be -2. So 1, -2. And then -2 to the 2 power would be -2 squared, so -4. So 2, -4. And then -2 to the 3 power would be 2 to the 3, which is 8, and then make it negative, so -8. So if we connect these points, we get almost the same function graph as example 14, but the graph is negative because this negative sign flipped the graph over the x-axis. So now the values never reach into the positives because all of them are made negative by that negative sign that flips the graph. So the asymptote is still y equals 0, but the range is now y less than 0 or as an interval -infinity, 0. So the range just flips just like the graph does. The domain is still -infinity to infinity or all real numbers. Example 16, we're graphing 3 to the -x, which is also 1/3 to the x. So these are the same function.